Hi, and welcome to She's the Boss, the show that's all about female founders and women doing incredible things in business. Now, my name's Jules Brooke, and I'm actually the founder of Handle Your Own PR as well, just to show that I'm also one of you, one of us. So today, my guest, I am beside myself with excitement because I've got Lucy Bloom with me. Now, Lucy Bloom is she's all over my feed, so she's incredibly famous in my world. She's a keynote speaker. She's an author. She's a consulting CEO. She's got a memoir and a podcast, both out at the moment, called Get the Girls Out, which obviously I want to hear more about. She's got a childbirth book for dudes, for the dads out there, called Cheers to Childbirth. And she's also a business coach. Hi, Lucy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I can't believe I'm doing this huge list of all the things that you do. You are so welcome. I can't wait to hear more. So can you start off by telling me what it is you're kind of doing now?
Well, right now we are smack bang in the middle of COVID schmovid, as I like to
Yes.
call it. And
Yucky
so that
poo-poo.
has forced me to change the way I'm doing business this year. I was
Right.
spending most of my time jumping on and off planes and stages and doing lots of live presenting. And it's one of my favourite things to do because a live audience is just such a gorgeous thing. And this year, if it has taught me anything, it's two things. I like sleeping in and I love the buzz of an audience. So I haven't
Right.
done a lot of presenting this year. It's just all been online from my home studio.
And so
And
how are you loving that?
not as much, I've
Right.
discovered, because I present the same stuff. The client's always happy, but I don't get that gorgeous, warm feedback from a big
Right.
audience. And especially the laughs, which I realise just fill my body with endorphins and make me buzz for days. Now I present and I just crawl into bed and have an early night. So it's nowhere near as much fun.
Well, can I just also say, though, that you're in Sydney and I'm in Melbourne, so really suck it up, Dal, because we are really doing it hard down here, that's for sure.
Yes,
Anyway, sorry, go on.
I'm still allowed to go for a walk on the beach. So yes, I totally hear you.
You're very lucky.
Promise not to complain one anymore.
Okay, go
so
on.
this year has also made me look at all my business, all my income streams, and focus on the ones that I can do without jumping on and off planes. And the one that the business stream that was probably most neglected for me were my books. So I just let
Right.
people sell themselves.
So when did they come out? Let everyone sort of know where they can find
my
them, and then we'll talk about.
my memoir, Get the Girls Out, is published by HarperCollins, and that came out in April last year. But the
Right.
way memoirs work is they are a slow burn and they keep selling for years. So I just kind of let HarperCollins do their thing. Then my other
Right.
book is called Cheers to Childbirth, and it's a dad's guide to childbirth support. Now, that came out 10 years ago. Right
Wow.
before COVID schmovid hit, I just got a bee in my bonnet and totally updated the book and brought it out on the 1st of April. So spent the whole of February, March, timing, brought it out on the 1st of April. But it has actually been brilliant timing because hospitals have limited women giving birth to only one support partner. So that
yes.
to be the dad. So no pressure, but don't screw it up.
But I have to say also that I know that you've worked with my old business partner when I had Handle Communication, Simone Hayden.
Yes.
And back in
humans.
yeah, I know, one of my favourites as well. And back in 2006, I had twins, and we started down this route of doing parenting PR for quite a few years because she had a little one as well. And we did a DVD series called Being Dad. And I remember at the time thinking, right, this must be the start of a whole lot of dad stuff, because there's shitloads of stuff out there about mums and hardly anything for dads. And I haven't heard a peep really since then. A few daddy bloggers, a few bits and pieces. So your book is still super relevant and one of the only references that people can go to.
Yeah, and it's really the only one, to be honest, it's the only one that's really succeeded, because I knew that this book would be bought by women. It would
Right.
be bought by women, probably read first, the corners turned over and put in front of a man. I thought that would probably be the right dynamic. And because I was a trained doula, I was attending births, I could see it's actually women in control and the man doing his best.
Right.
And so I made sure that this book still appealed to women. Everything else that has come out, there's another book that came out at the same time, and there's been other things along the way for men, but they've been created by men, for men, forgetting about women, and in some places is a little disrespectful. So I found that in some
Right.
of the men's stuff.
It makes sense actually, because I don't know that a lot of guys go looking for, oh, I need to go and see if there's a book out there I can read about, my partner's pregnancy. But of course, the wife, partner, whatever, is going to be going, what can I get him?
That's right, and the grandparents. So
Yes.
mother-in-laws are big purchasers of this book, and they give it to their son-in-law.
Right.
Don't screw up, sunshine. So I think part of the success has been remembering that 95% of self-help books are bought by women in the first place. It's the woman who stands to benefit. Women are massive readers. And then I also got midwives and obstetricians on site. So as soon as you have them going, this is gold. That was part of the book's success. But this year I really focused on the digital book funnel for that title. And I've learned a huge amount about optimizing landing pages, about drip emails, all that digital marketing stuff. I've had the time to really focus on. And it's such a joy when people buy a book, an ebook version. I don't even have to put anything in the mail. It's just gone. And I've worked out how to sidestep Amazon.
Yeah, well done, because Amazon takes about 75% of the income otherwise, I think, don't they?
Yeah, forget that. So I've learned how to optimize Facebook ads, really optimize them, testing images. It's been fascinating to see which kind of images people
resonate and work.
Yeah, and I've got this, the winning image is a pregnant woman standing next to her dude who has a bit of a belly, not quite as big as hers. Now that's the winning image. I have tested it till the cows come home, and two really funny things happened. Facebook banned not only the ad, but disabled my entire advertising account because the bot...
You showed a nipple?
No, it was really interesting. The bot that does that kind of assessment, it's not a human assessment, it's just bots that do it, saw two bodies and thought it was a before and after weight loss shot.
Oh my God.
So when I actually have contacts at Facebook in Australia, because I did some speaking for them a few years ago, and it's been the juiciest contact to have in the whole wide world is a person, a real human at Facebook. And he took a look at it and I said, dude, when does a before and after shot become hairier?
Well, but also, why is a before and after shot not allowed? I didn't even know that wasn't allowed.
Yeah, definitely not allowed. You can't do weight loss before and afters because it's
because of fat blaster.
Misleading. Yeah, it can be too misleading.
Right. Well, there you go. I've learned a new thing there.
Up there. The other interesting thing I noticed, that the most clicked place on the landing page for that book is the woman's belly. So people...
so you're actually testing on the page where they're clicking and it's the belly. That's hilarious.
I test that. You can get these heat maps that show you where people click, how far down the page they go before they opt out, that sort of stuff. And the most clicked spot on that whole page, people are clicking a belly. So I've had to adapt it. So, like, if you're going to click a belly, it'll take you to a shopping cart with a book already.
Oh, I love it. I have to say, I did a very fast learning curve in the last probably 18 months about landing pages and optimized copy and drip feeding emails and stuff. And it's a whole new world. But listen, let's move on to Get the Girls Out. So what's Get the Girls Out about? Your memoir.
Sure, that's my memoir. And it's taken me a while to just get to the point where I can just go, it's my memoir. I was looking at a video of me talking about the book before it was published, and I went, I suppose you could call it my memoir. I wasn't ready to go, okay, I wrote a whole fucking book about me.
And I know, but isn't it? And that's actually what people are really interested in, you. And today I want to interview you about you. So it's really funny that you had that sort of little moment.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's all about you. Tell us a little bit about you, because this will lead straight into what I'm going to ask you afterwards anyway.
Okay. Well, writing a memoir was a really interesting process, and that book is separated into themes rather than... I'm not a chronological, let's go in a normal order kind of lady. So that book came out in themes that mattered to me. So courage and kindness, optimism, saying yes, charity. There's a whole chapter on charity, which I actually listened to the Audible version of it. I thought, I don't remember what I wrote in that chapter. And I was doing a whole stack of housework and I put it on and listened to me read my own chapter on all the learnings and crazy stuff I came across as a CEO of a international aid charity, which you'd think would be all fun and games and warm, fuzzy feelings, but it was really cutthroat, that whole world. So cutthroat. I came from...
How surprising is that, actually? That it was.
Oh, yeah.
I think I remember which one you were working on at the time. And I do remember, because I know you're a consulting CEO anyway, so you don't kind of go and take the job and stay forever. But I do remember thinking it's interesting to see you leave, and also, you know, what goes down in that world. So you've written about it in the memoirs.
It's so cutthroat. I say it's more cutthroat than advertising with less pay.
Whoa, that's a huge call. All right,
yeah.
tell us more.
Be more warm fuzzies and doing good, but it's actually more going into battle. A lot more of that than I had originally anticipated when I first took on my first CEO role. But also meeting amazing people, amazing, wonderful people. This afternoon I'm speaking with one of my favourite Ethiopians, and we're going to work out, we've got to raise $36,000 for her work to train people in the countryside in Ethiopia as health workers.
Amazing.
Hit really hard.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things, though, that I've been seeing, particularly because I'm interviewing lots and lots of female founders, is that most of them want to attach themselves to some kind of charity or some kind of not-for-profit to give back. So just as a hoy, if you want to, you're more than welcome to mention in my group, because there's a lot of women in there selling products wanting to give a percentage to a charity and they don't know which one to give it to.
Yes, yeah, we're just breaking it down now. She needs to train 150 workers, and it'll only cost $250 US for a year-long training for these rural workers. So as soon as that all goes live, you'll be the first to know. So yeah, that time in working in charity, I met some amazing people, travelled to some brilliant places. Ethiopia is still one of my favourite places on earth. Then I worked in Cambodia, and that taught me a huge amount. Gosh, Cambodia is an interesting country. Far too many NGOs kind of fighting for who they'll care for. There's too many.
Gosh.
Yeah, there's too many NGOs in Cambodia.
I hadn't even thought about that. So you know what? Now that we're talking about that aspect of your life, rather than talk about the memoirs, let's do that at the end.
Sure.
Let's talk about your whole life. So I know that I'm guessing when you were a little girl, you didn't say, when I grow up, I want to be a consulting CEO and an author. So how did it all happen? Can you take me through the story of your life?
Oh, sure. How much time have we got?
Plenty.
Honestly, when I was a little girl, it never occurred to me that I would be coaching or instructing CEOs and boards on how to do things well, profitably, and stay out of jail. I never imagined I'd be that experienced, but I also couldn't even fathom. I'm 46 years old, and I was explaining to my kids, when I was 14, I went on this cycling camp for kids. We did a big country, 400 Ks in country New South Wales every spring holidays. I started doing that when I was 14. Guy who ran that camp was 35, and I remember he was old. He was up there with my parents old. So everything above 30 was just like old people.
I remember when 24 seemed like, I can't wait till I'm 24 because then I'll be so old.
Funny, isn't it? It's all
relative. Now someone says they're 40 and I'm like, you're a baby.
Chicken. I remember when I was 18, I dated a guy who was 23 and I thought he was so grown up.
I could beat you. When I was 21, I went out with a guy who was 47 and older than my dad. For about 3 years, and he was my boss's boss. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
And now it's all in reverse. I'm 46. My last partner was 33. Thank you very much. So, when I was a kid, it just never occurred to me that I'd have this kind of experience and sort of be that clever. I couldn't even fathom it. When I was a kid, I loved horses. I loved to ride. I wanted to be a jockey. Doesn't matter that I'm 5'7" and far too big for that kind of stuff. I just wanted to work with horses, which is a bit short-sighted. I think horses are really fun. Excuse moi.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I actually work with a woman at the moment. One of the women who's doing my PR course teaches leadership with horses. So she's based in King Lake and does this whole leadership and team building thing. So, yeah, which I mean, that anything that you do with animals, I think, is gorgeous.
That's what I wanted to do as a kid.
So,
And
what happened?
I
What
left
happened
school
when
when
you
I was
left
a kid.
school?
I did initially work with horses. I worked as a jillaroo. So that was so much fun, cutting cattle, sitting in a tractor all day, cutting hay, best fun, and a great gap between university and leaving school and getting academic or getting a full-time job. That was just so much fun. But I did that for fun rather than a intelligent career move. But honestly, all my career moves have mainly been because they look like a good idea and look like
You're
fun.
an instinctive woman. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Go with your instincts.
Then I got an awesome job in an advertising agency. Best
Right.
fun. And I was a junior creative at first, and they moved me around the agency, so it was perfect for me. I bore easily, so I got a taste of everything: the media department, the client service department, the creative, which I loved the most. Loved it. All those Pantone textures in the creative department, I loved
Yes.
scalpels and stuff. Bromides, back in the day of bromides, and
Oh my God, you're bringing up words that I haven't heard for ages and ages. I think
only
I was in
just caught
advertising around the same time.
only just caught like the end of the bromide world. And I literally got my first email address in that job. When we all got our email addresses, we were like, but we should just go and talk to each other. And very quickly we were like, nah, we'll just email. Uh, I loved that job because it was so much variety and they trusted me so much. They gave me so much responsibility. I got so much exposure to really interesting stuff. World Vision was our biggest client at the time, Amnesty International, World Society for the Protection of Animals. So I think that's where I got my toes into that charity, the charity world and the fundraising communication side of charity. I could
Right,
see how
okay.
that worked and I loved it. Then I had a massive motorcycle accident and that changed everything. It was sort of like COVID, but just for me. I was in my own little tragic boat.
Oh, stop. So what happened?
I just had a motorcycle accident on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Dude just wiped me out, nearly lost my leg. I had 14 reconstructive surgeries. That took a year, a week, and a day. So I thought I would be late for work, and hell yes, I was
You,
really late for work. And it would
uh,
be 7 years before I was really 100%, well, as good as I was going to get after this accident.
7 years. So what did you do during that 7 years? I presume walking around was nearly impossible, was it? Or was it
No, for
just
the first
painful?
year or two, my leg was a full-time job. I really had to look after it. And then I set up my own little ad agency. So I freelanced and then I gathered staff and clients and actually started my very, very first jobs with those really decorative chalkboards that you get in pubs.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I didn't even know that was a thing.
yeah, because I've got really nice handwriting. So it started out like that, and then graphic design and advertising. And my first juicy client was CSR. I was really lucky to pick up that as a client, and it took off
Sweet.
from there. Then I ran
Sorry,
that
I had to
agency
say that.
for not in the sugar department. It was
Oh,
actually
well, darn it.
in the timber department, and building materials and stuff. Uh, so then I ran that agency for 20 years and I really grew up.
Wow, that's a huge amount of time, right? So and lots of experience. So why did you get out? What happened that made you get out of that?
I got bored, which is usually why I move. That sort of heralds the next move in my life is always boredom.
I know that feeling. Right. So what was
I
the
just
next
got
move?
bored of those limited briefs where they go, okay, here's the brief, here's who we're talking to, this is how we think we're going to do it. Can you make it happen? And then we come up with brilliant ideas, and they go, oh, we limited the brief to even less, a smaller audience.
Yeah.
These little small briefs. I love the change. I love going from the NRL to Mills and Boon, back to Boral Timber to Ready Mix Concrete, and then we had a bikini client. And, I loved the variety, but these small limited briefs started to get boring. And so then I was just given this really cool opportunity to work on the Ethiopian business, the hospital in Ethiopia, and I volunteered my skills there. So they were a pro bono client, loved it, loved doing their work, and offered
Right.
to go to Ethiopia I'm a photographer too, so my camera has been my ticket to glory in lots of ways. It's been,
Right.
hey, I'll come and take a photo shoot. Bam! Next thing you know, you're in surgery in Ethiopia in an African hospital with this famous surgeon telling you about her technique she's been doing for 50 years. My camera really has been a really, really awesome. And I always say the bigger your lens, the more access you get. You can't just rock up with an iPhone. The bigger your lens, the cooler places you
I'm not
get.
even going to go there where you're leading, but yeah, I hear you.
And then I'd been volunteering my expertise for 8 years when the founder of the hospital, Dr. Catherine Hamlin, asked me to be her CEO and founding director. So together, she and I were the co-founders of a charitable entity.
So hang on a minute. How did that even happen? So you're working at an ad agency and doing photo shoots and creative stuff, but working exclusively on this client. What made them draw the line or draw that, I don't know, the arrow, whatever it's called, between 2 points to say, okay, I'm going to get this creative person that's been working with us to run the company?
I just think I'm a really likable person.
You are. There's no doubt about it. I can see that through the camera. But that still seems amazing. What a huge opportunity.
An 8-year process, I guess. 8 years. I went from volunteer to CEO in 8 years. So I went to Ethiopia many times. I got to know Catherine really well. My skill set was as a creative, but also as a businesswoman, and I'd run a business, and I was a really good communicator. The bit I needed to learn fast was the governance piece. So reporting to a board, I had to write the constitution. I had to create this entity from scratch. I had to work out how to create a charity from scratch to get that charitable status so that we could give tax receipts, all that money wrangling governance side. I had to learn really fast. But I did it alongside Catherine, who was an absolute doll. An absolute pleasure to work with. She only died in March this year.
I'm really sad to hear she died. That's, yeah.
Well, the good side of that is she was 100% ready to go. She was like,
right.
Yeah, 100%. Since she was 93, she was like, right.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I sort of thought maybe she was closer to your age at 93 and having lived a great life.
She was almost exactly 50 years older than me.
Right. So I get it. Yep. And she'd lived an amazing life by the sounds of it. So what happened from there?
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. So what happened from there? So you set up this charity together. How long did you work on that full time?
I was the CEO for nearly 3 years and raised $7 million in that time.
Wow. How? How did you raise it? Just events?
No. Someone asked me recently, how did you do that? And as I coach with all my CEOs, you have to have multiple income streams. It has to be, you have to develop multiples. And I developed 5 income streams for that charity. There were appeals, which all charities do, but they were really targeted appeals. So we asked people to actually fund one operation in Ethiopia, and we need 1,000 people willing to do that. Then you own that. In the same way that we're doing this with these health workers, you kind of sponsor that health worker at $250 and that health worker now has a career, let alone all the people they care for.
And the donator can see the path. They can see the difference that they're making, which I think makes such a huge difference. Yeah.
And they can either raise the money to own that piece of awesomeness or write a check, or they can own 10 of those pieces, whatever. So there were appeals. There was adventure travel. So no one had taken people to Ethiopia from Australia before. And that was a fabulous challenge. The first people we spoke to said, oh, no, Ethiopia's too dangerous, can't take you there. How's about Tanzania? No, we're going to Ethiopia. It's such a safe place to be.
What a great idea, though, because so many people that do donate to these sorts of things would love the travel and the connection. But I have never heard of a charity doing that.
Yeah, no, we were the first to take Australian travellers to Ethiopia, and the first group was only 12 people, and they raised $250,000 in that first group.
Whew.
And they did a run. There was a 10-kilometre run, a bit like the City to Surf. Like every Ethiopian gives it a crack because you don't need it. They're all brilliant runners. They all live at altitude, so they did this amazing run. So there were events and appeals and retail. There's a retail strategy that worked really well. The first year it turned over $750,000.
Wow.
We imported Ethiopian coffee. I personally checked the chain of custody on that coffee. I actually went to the coffee farms, met the farmers. There were 10 families that produced all our coffee on the side of one hill in the Sidamo region. So single origin, 100%, all came from one hillside.
All ticking all those boxes for all the hipsters, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I worked on the production line with the women just to check that it was sustainable, pleasant. I didn't want people breaking their backs to produce this coffee. I had the best day. It was the best fun with these women. Couldn't speak a word of their lingo, but you just have to pick out the dud beans. And every time
Right.
I found one, I go, woo! And they just thought I was so ridiculous.
It's all about laughing.
This pink-haired lady who was so thrilled to find a dud.
I love being a pink-haired lady going overseas. I always think I did that in India, and at one stage a couple of years ago, someone said, we were walking through a market, and I said to my Indian friend who was with us, I can hear all that whispering. What's going on? He said, they're all going, pink hair, pink hair, pink hair.
Yes.
So after you finished that charity, what was the next step for you?
Then I hit the speakers trail. So I was fired from that role.
Right. So, but what?
All of that is covered in my memoir, and I always sort of send people in that direction because I've covered it carefully to cover my
Well
own.
done.
But basically, I wanted to keep growing the charity. We grew, we doubled income year on year, and the board had this lunatic idea that we should cap fundraising. And capping fundraising and limiting it was not in my DNA.
No, and I can't imagine any logic that says that that's worth doing if you're a charity.
They felt that other countries around the world should take up the challenge.
No. Right, so you were out of there, and so what was the light bulb moment, or what made you think I could actually have a career as a speaker?
Oh, the clients, they just kept booking me. So when
Lucky you. So how did that all happen though? How did they knew about you through the ad agency and then through the charity?
Actually, they knew. I sort of cut my teeth and really learnt to speak well when I created the childbirth education program for men. So that came before the book. And I created these workshops and I ran them in the pub for 6 years. So every month for 6 years, I'd rock up to the pub. Sometimes I didn't want to be there. I'd rock up to the pub, there'd be 20 or 30 dudes who also didn't want to be there. And I had to give them, because they'd all been booked in by their partner, their mother-in-law, and I had to give them 2 hours of juicy, fast-paced, funny, but important content that they would go away remembering when they came to support their partner. So that's how I learned pace and storytelling and how to really hold. I had to hold them for an hour at a time, and then we break for dinner. So that's when I learned how to speak. Then when I became the CEO for the first time, I noticed that little title, CEO, is far more impressive than it should be. People go, oh, CEO.
Oh, maybe I should change my title from head honcho of my business to CEO.
Oh, people go gaga. It's really strange.
Okay.
So I'd be invited to speak, and I did work for this very cool organisation, and I worked out how to really milk the emotion out of the story, because it is heartbreaking, utterly heartbreaking. But I also worked out as a speaker that because I was a funny speaker, I knew that already, if I could take people on an emotional roller coaster, I could make them laugh, make them cry, like absolutely drop them into the worst of it, make them laugh again, make them cry. By the end of a speech, they would open their wallets.
Oh, well, there you go. For everyone who's listening who's trying to raise money, that's the way to do it.
I gave them that call to action. I also learned that you never leave an audience going, oh, isn't she doing a great job? You leave an audience feeling utterly uncomfortable. That if they don't do something, they personally don't take action, something will be left undone. So lots of charity CEOs take the opportunity for these gorgeous speeches to chest beat. Ooh, aren't we doing a brilliant job? And there is a place for that. But so much of what I had heard at the time was just leaving the audience going, oh, well done, brilliant. Morning tea?
Yeah, right. So what do you do? How do you end things?
I had to leave them on a cracker story. I used to start with a video that covered lots of detail. I think it only went for 8 minutes. So it covered lots of detail, mechanics, so I didn't have to. And then I could just tell them story after story after story. And I made sure they were really funny, tragically sad, hilariously funny, absolutely horrid, uncomfortable. I love nothing more than telling a whole room of male mortgage brokers about broken vaginas.
And then what do you do to, what's that hook that you leave them? What do you say at the end that gets them all uncomfortable and going, oh my God, I need to support this?
At that time, it was, well, we just need $600 from every single one of you. And that would account for one woman having her surgery paid for and her life completely restored. So I would just I got really good at just whopping the ask in there. I don't understand people who can't ask. I don't get that.
Never been a problem for you.
No, and you can't work in charity and be afraid to ask. Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to
I bet.
ask the right people, ask for the right amount. Certain people you ask for $60,000, others you ask for 60. One of the most successful things we did was a program called Crochet for a Cause. So I discovered there were all these gorgeous, brilliant crocheters all over Australia, but it was costing us too much money to send their beautiful creations all the way to Ethiopia. It was costing $10 per blanket to send it to Ethiopia. So what I invented was this gorgeous program where volunteer crocheters taught people how to crochet. It was $60 for a day of how to. There'd be 10 in a class. Hey, bingo, that's $600. That would pay for an operation.
Nice. Yeah.
And so that little group of 10 strangers would come together and get the biggest thrill out of funding this surgery. Some of them didn't even know that that's what was the class funded. They would just see it online and go, oh, yeah, I want to learn. Oh, it's at the pub. Sounds fun. Everything I do seems to come back to the pub. My childbirth classes for men were at the pub.
Best place to do it.
That gave those gorgeous crocheters this fabulous outlet for their skills and to teach people who wanted to learn. Then Google came to the party and gave us a massive grant, $330 a day. Use it or lose it, and we used it to advertise those classes. So just those classes raised $50,000 a year. Lots of grassroots things. I think the last income stream that I didn't explain was asking people to raise funds for the organisation.
Oh, yes, of course. Asking people in their communities to just go and, makes sense.
Kids were really big. Schools were huge. There was a school in Sydney who one of their sports houses was called Hamlin. I went and saw them, cheered them on at the athletics carnival. So, and there were funny things like we had a university group do an undie run. Where people ran it.
Love it. And also, if I put my publicity hat on, great publicity for you as well. So a lot of these initiatives are really, really good because they also will get the media involved to help spread the word.
That's exactly right. And then you tap into their networks and then your network grows. So all of these ideas work for all charities because all charities have different networks, have different emotional tie-ins. I did a whole lot of consulting with an organisation called Heart Kids, and my son Hudson had a total heart reconstruction when he was 6. So there's this, a true heart connection. And that organisation is almost entirely funded by people whose children or family members have needed heart surgery, like really radical heart surgery. Hole in the heart is really common in newborns. And so every charity has a different heart connection with the people who want to donate and raise funds for them. Anyone with any kind of obstetric anything gets how childbirth injuries would be just so hard.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there's a woman called, I think, Stephanie Thompson. She calls herself Brave Mama, who started a movement around it. But my dad was an obstetrician, so and I know that he was. He always wanted to get over to Africa actually and help the women with fistula. So it's been on my radar. Anyway, back to you. So, talk to me now. So you decided you wanted to go out onto the speaker circuit. You had obviously loads and loads of bookings. Has that sort of become your main business these days?
It has actually. That was my main income stream until COVID schmovid.
That would be the dream of so many businesswomen out there. Well done.
Well, it's a dream, and then the reality is always harder than you think. So there's a lot of travel. Like on stage adoration, 5-star hotels. But it's actually an awful lot of preparation, a lot of shitty food in departure lounges, A lot of you show up at events and no one cares who you are until you've spoken, and then there's a queue and everyone wants
Yes,
to
that's
interview. A lot of nights all on your own in usually nice hotels, but a lot of lonely nights in hotels, eating room service and FaceTiming family.
yeah,
So
not
it can
seeing your
actually be a
kids.
lonely life on the road. Luckily,
I agree, actually. And I know a few people like you who are doing it, and some don't have families, and you just kind of think really lonely. I mean, I know that it's you've got to really feel like it's your mission, and you need to be on the stage, I think, to do that for any huge length of time.
yeah, the payoff is you meet amazing people in those audiences and the people who book you. But I've met people in my audience who've become really great friends. You meet amazing people. You get to go to really cool places. I think Fiji and Barcelona, and Denver.
Pretty
Fiji and
cool.
Barcelona
Pretty
are probably
cool.
my favourite places I have spoken in. Fiji,
Right.
yeah, I always go, yep, I'll be there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'm in.
Hello. uh, so, yeah, the upsides are those things. Some cool places to travel. You meet excellent people. But I haven't missed all the flying. It's really exhausting.
What do you think? I mean, now coming out of this, do you think when they open the borders that you're going to really reduce the amount of hours that you do flying? And also, just, anecdotally, do you think in the industry now that everybody learning how to do their talks with Zoom and all the rest of it, that it's going to reduce the number of live events going forward?
No, I don't think so. If you'd asked me 2 months ago, I'd go, oh my gosh, it's all over. But I've been doing my appointments with my doctor by phone. How cool is that? I hope that always stays the same.
Yeah, same.
Except not the gynecologist. No one wants to do that by Zoom. Let's not make that clear. But this is just a doctor I have for my funky thyroid. All he has to do is look at my bloods, tell me what to do on the phone. It's brilliant. Saves all this mucking around.
Oh yeah, and if you need to get repeat subscription, like, I mean, I'm giving up smoking Champix. You've got to go to the doctor all the time, and I mean, all I want to do is just ring and go, "I'm fine. Can you just give me another script?" So
Yeah.
yeah, perfect for
He
those kind
doesn't
of
need to
ones.
see me. I can tell him what's happening. So, but
Yeah.
he told me that all the doctors' events, conferences, they call them meetings, all cancelled for 2020. But he said doctors are champing at the bit to get back to live events. And I love it that it's doctors because he said online you lose all the networking. And he said one of the best things, actually, he thought the best thing about meetings and live events is the networking and meeting the other doctors.
Isn't it interesting though that they're not doctors in general, I don't think are very big on social either. So there's all sorts of ways that they could be networking that they just don't seem to get. And so they're back to, we still need to network, we still need to meet people in the flesh.
Yeah, and actually, he told me this long story about how he's missing events. I'm like, I'm hearing you, I'm hearing you. And he said, because what I'm about to prescribe for you is something I learned at the buffet at a morning tea for an event in America. Some dude from Florida worked out that when you take this, you need to take this, or you're not going to absorb that. And he said, then I went and did all the reading, and he was absolutely right. And now you are going to do exactly what I learned at the buffet. And so it was a really good example of, actually, that face-to-face meeting real people cannot be done online.
No, well, the accidental kind of catching up with someone and realizing that, you're either learning something from them or that you've got something in common, I guess. Those sorts of things. It's much more intentional if you're going to do it online.
And then I think you pick up better networks that way too. Also, the other thing he mentioned, which I absolutely agree with, he says, when I go to a meeting or an event, you have my full attention. I'm not going to just check my email because there's a bit of a
True.
down spot. And I am the worst at that. I'm so easily distracted. I bore easily. You have my full attention right now because I'm doing the speaking. But if I was watching or listening to others, I would have checked my email. I would have sent a screenshot. I would have fuffed about, looked at Instagram. He said, when I'm at an event, it has my full attention. I learn better. I meet more people. The speakers are required to be far more entertaining and engaging.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
stage. I noticed that I have a voice coach. She's absolutely brilliant, and she trains opera singers in their German repertoire, and she trains female
Right.
speakers.
Not obscure at all then. Really well, but huge niche.
She's awesome, and she showed me the difference between speeches I have given sitting down online like this and speeches I have given when I'm on a stage, and I can move around and my shoulders are back and my torso's right up, and it actually changes the shape of my jaw and the way my throat works. And
Wow.
the way I project, the
Interesting
way
insight.
I swallow, all those things are affected. So I've just swallowed. Whereas on stage, I never do that because my body's actually operating the way it should when I'm projecting. So I think live events will kick off. I think we'll all just be a bit more hygienic.
Yeah.
And that's so wonderful. I think we could all have been a bit more hygienic.
Anyway, I guess that's true. All right, so amazing career. Can you talk to me a little bit about around the, being fired from a job, deciding to move into other things, some of the challenges that come in life? We learn a lot. Have you got some sort of tips that you can share with some of the other women that might be watching who are running their own business or thinking about it, of some of the things that you might have learned along the way? Just a couple.
Yeah, totally. Well,
Off you
you
go.
know nobody until you've been fired. I always quote that. If you haven't been fired, you have been towing the line for far too long. It's a very prestigious club, the Fired Club, and those words were actually said to me by my speaker's agent, and she's a New Yorker. She said, "You ain't nobody till you've been fired." And
I love her. Yeah, that's very
found
true.
out later she was quoting Anna Wintour from Vogue. But it hit the spot so beautifully. It was just
The woman who fires so many women.
That's right. But being fired actually pushed me where I needed to go. I wouldn't have resigned for a long while. And it wasn't actually sustainable, the level of energy I was putting into that business. So it was really good for me to move on. And it would have been stifling to try and cap what we were doing and earn less money.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does, I think it often, look, something a boss said to me 100 million years ago when I was only in my early 20s or even late teens, and she said, opportunity doesn't happen till you let go. And I really didn't understand it at the time until I left that job. And for the rest of my life, it's like my favorite motto, because if you let go and move on, that's when people start going, oh, you're free now. Okay, well, what about doing this? And how about that? And you in your own head go, well, if I can't do that, what are all the other options that I'm going to do?
That's exactly right. Really good advice. I loved it. I did love the freedom. I loved heading out on the speakers trail. And then somebody knew I was available, and bam, I was picked up by the next charity to do the next contract. And that was in Cambodia, and I learnt so much. But I think if I were to give advice, my biggest, juiciest, most important piece of advice that I give constantly to everyone I coach, people who tell me their problems, to my kids, to myself. I'm always reminding myself of this, and my bestie is always going, remember your advice? Is the less you can give a shit about what other people think, the more you will fly.
What fantastic advice. I love it. It's so true.
It's pretty simple. So
because what holds back so many women is that fear of what other people might think. And in the end, who gives a shit what they think? Because you'll always find your own tribe. There are always going to be people who don't get you, and there are going to be just as many people that do.
That's exactly right. I think it was Dieter Von Teese who said, you might be the juiciest, ripest peach, but you will always find someone who doesn't like peaches. So there'll always be those things. And I always say, honestly, if someone's sitting around thinking about me and passing judgment on my decision, I worry for them. Go get busy. Do some other stuff. And their opinion of me, none of my business. So I often have to remind myself, actually, I need to not care what other people think. Just stay fixed on what I want to do and what I want to do really well and what I enjoy doing.
And you're so right when you say you have to remind yourself, because we do need to remind ourselves probably every month or so when you start going down a hole because someone said it's that weird thing, isn't it? So 15 people will tell you how great something you've done is. One will say, or maybe 15,000 will say how great you are. One will say, I didn't like it. I think you're really shit. And that is the moment that you go right down the hole.
But that is your brain is hardwired to do that. I did some neuroscience study last year, and that's one of the things I remember most is your brain is hardwired to remember things that suck to protect you from them from next time, and that you have to have really unbelievably outstanding occasions that are much, much better than that worst occasion for those outstanding things to really have the same power as a negative comment or occasion. In my career as a speaker, I have only ever had one client say to me, yeah, that speech wasn't the best I've ever heard, mixed reviews. And it was in Queenstown. And one of the most awesome people who is a sounding board for me is a dude called Bernard Salt. And I do like to pay out on old white men, but I also like to acknowledge that sometimes it's old white men who open big, very heavy doors.
Doors for us, yeah.
And he's one of them. And absolute gentleman, nicest guy, very smart. And I contacted him after that gig and went, I screwed up in Queenstown. It sounded brilliant from the stage. The audience loved it from the stage. Client said, mixed reviews. He goes, Lucy, forget it. Forget Queenstown. He said, I gave a shit speech in Mackay once, and I put energy into hating Mackay for 10 years. Don't do it. Just move on quick. He said, you're better than Queenstown. and he was absolutely right. My next speech just landed. It was in Melbourne. I gave an almost identical speech. It's this gorgeous speech that I can adapt to just about every audience. And that audience nearly blew me off the stage. They loved it so much. Client was beaming afterwards, booked me again. So, yes, you have to sometimes remind yourself that those negative comments are...
And that people have a bad day. There are people out there who, like, if you got me on the wrong day, I might say something's rubbish just because I'm in a shit, not because I really believe it's rubbish.
Yeah, that's right. Don't take on that stuff. That would be my biggest advice that flows through so many things that I do. Just don't give anyone's opinions much bandwidth in your brain.
Fantastic. Well, Lucy, I know you're not going to believe it, but we're really, I think, at the end. I have absolutely loved chatting to you. You are the most amazing woman. Can you tell how now this will probably be a 10-minute bit anyway. Tell people how they can get hold of you, because there's a lot of different ways, I imagine.
This might be a 10-minute bit, because last time someone asked me this question, I told them a story about a porn star. So here, I'm really...
Go on, I want to hear about the porn star.
My name is Lucy Bloom, so I'm dead easy to find, thelucybloom.com. But when I changed my surname. I decided I was a goose for taking a man's name when I got married when I was 21. That was a really silly move.
And was Bloom the married name? No.
No, Perry was my married name. Shasta was my birth name. So my dad I had my dad's name for 21 years. Then I had my husband's name for 21 years. And I thought, bugger that, I'm just going to pick a new name for the next 21, see how we roll. And I threw it to an internet vote. And so I let Facebook...
I think I voted.
Did you?
I think I did.
One of the other names I considered was Lucy Wild, because, that sounded fun. But then I always say to people, any business name, anything like that, Google it first. Any date, Google a date before you go, right, it's going to be on the, 22nd of March. Google the date, make sure something else massive isn't happening. Google a name, and I Googled it, and Lucy Wild was a massive porn star with the hugest rack you have ever seen.
You didn't think, oh, great, I might get some of her audience.
And so I thought, I can't beat her SEO. There is no way I can beat her search engine optimization. So that name was off. So Lucy Bloom it is, the Lucy Bloom.
No, but hang on, why Bloom? What was the thing about Bloom that got your attention?
I was standing in the chemist, which is called Bloom's the Chemist. So I thought, Bloom, it's a nice name.
It is, it's really good.
It just felt nice, because I had come out of a 20-year marriage and doing my own thing, and the internet spoke, so Lucy Bloom it is. So there's links there to everything, my books. Follow me on Instagram. I'm like 60 followers under 3,000. It's such a tough one to grow.
Come on, 60 of you go and follow the real Lucy Bloom on Instagram. I would, but I'm shit at Instagram. I can't begin to tell you so. Look, you have just been such a delightful guest with such great stories. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.